Right, so welcome back to another deck profile video. Today we are covering Phoenixmon X Antibody from BT16. So the Avian deck has seen a little bit of support in this set, namely through this card, amongst other bits, but this is just my take on how I'm playing Avian at the moment. It's really good fun to play, actually. I've been playing this since BT14, I think now. And I only built it because I was starting to get bored of some of the decks I was playing at the time. And yeah, I mean, it was working wonders. It didn't get me many wins, but it was just stupid funny when you're essentially warping into level 5s without paying any memory. So it was actually kind of cool. So yeah, we're going to cover this deck. I am playing it slightly differently to what you may have already seen out there. But just to get started, we'll dive straight in. So as for the egg, we're going with the BT15 Yokomon. Its on deletion effect is return one Digimon card with Avian, Bird, Beast, Animal, or Sovereign, other than Sea Animal, in one of its traits from your trash back to your hand. This is just essential for this deck. You can opt to use other red colour eggs. However, I just find this deck works very well having this egg in it. And so yeah, it's just customary for me to have 4 of these in here. Next up, we'll go into the rookies. So we're running 12 in total, and there's only 3 sets. They're probably what you would expect, but to start with, we're going with Biomon from BT13. This is the Warp card, so basically on play, if played by an effect, you can return one of your Christy Daemons back to your hand, and this Digimon may Digivolve into a Garudamon in the hand without paying its Digivolution cost. Now, this is a really good card. Sadly, I'm not running the Christy Daemon in this deck. I was, but I've taken her out purely on the basis of making room for other cards in this deck. So realistically, you're not going to be utilising the on-play for this card, but it's the on-deletion I prefer as well, which is just to draw 1. But yeah, for me, I'm running 4 of just to be on the safe side, but yeah, Christy Daemon sadly has come out just to make room for other Tamers or option cards. The next card we have is BT15 Biomon. Now, this is the super rare of that set. Start main effect is essentially you get to trash one of your Digimon cards with the same traits I've already mentioned. And if you do, you can then reveal the top 4 cards of the deck, and you can add 1 red card among them to your hand and then bottom deck the rest. Now, it's just stupid funny because you get to select any red card as opposed to a Digimon or an option card and so forth. So just being able to reveal the top 4 and select anything that you realistically want is exceptionally handy. It's also got an inherited effect, so your turn once per turn, but when a card is removed from your opponent's security stack, you gain 1 memory, which does come in handy early game as well as later as well. So yeah, it's just customary to have 4 of her in there. And then lastly, now we're going all the way back to BT11 now, which doesn't seem very long ago, but another Biomon. This one is your searcher for the deck, alongside the BT15 variant, but you reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. You add 1 Digimon card with Vaccine in its traits and 1 red Tamer to your hand, and then you place the rest of the cards to the bottom of the deck. So it's a good dual searcher to have, because all of your deck is Vaccine, and naturally with this particular deck I'm playing all red Tamer cards. So yeah, that's my 12 rookies for this deck. And then we'll go next with the champions. So now this is where mine differs. So I've seen a lot of these decks are running only like anywhere between 6 and 8 champions. So I'm still running 10 just because I feel comfortable playing that way. But to start with, we go with BT15 Bergeron. So when Digivolving effect is you get to return one Digimon card with the various traits already mentioned, and you basically return that card from your trash back to your hand. This goes very well with the combination of Sora from BT15 as well, which would then obviously activate her effect, and you can start spamming out more bodies. The inherited effect for this one is exactly the same as one of the Biomons. Essentially, when a card is removed from your opponent's security stack, you gain one memory, but it's a your turn effect. So yeah, just a solid 3-off to have in this deck, I think. But you can opt to maximize your ratios or not. It's completely up to you. Next up, we've got another BT11 variant. We've got Birdramon. This one comes with blocker. It's also got an on-deletion effect where you can play out one red Tamer card with a cost of 4 or less from your hand without paying the cost. So this is just a good card generally, but again, it's a good 3-off to have just to balance out those ratios of Birdramon. Now, the tech card I've thrown in is Geo Grey from BT13. I still think, don't get me wrong, it's a vaccine card, so there are some cards in this deck that won't search for it. But ultimately, it's just a good one-off card generally, and it was super strong, and that's why it was restricted. But when Digivolving, you get to search your security stack and play a red or a yellow Tamer without paying the cost, and then you recover +1. Its inherited effects are your turn effect once per turn, but when one of your red or yellow Tamers becomes suspended, you may delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 3000 DP or less. So that actually comes in handy if you're going up against, Digimon that block play effects or memory effects, etc. But yeah, this is just a solid one-off to have, especially for early game if you manage to find it, because getting those Tamers on board for no cost is just stupid funny. The last champions we're running is Saberdramon from the promos. Now, we're running 3 purely on the basis of the fact that it obviously has Raid and Retaliation, so it's a good card to swing over Digimon you don't want on the board. It's also got an on-deletion inherited effect where you would return one red or purple Digimon card from your trash back to your hand. This card just fits in well with the deck because most of the time you're utilising your on-deletion effects. So yeah, it's just a good, solid, good 3-off to have. But those are my champions. Like I said, most decks that are playing like the Beamon Rush sort of stuff is anywhere between 6 to 8. In some cases, I've seen less, but it doesn't really suit my own style of play. So what you're seeing is just essentially the kind of play style I'm working with, but feel free to mix and match those ratios. We'll move on to our ultimate level Digimon. So we're going to go and start with a 2-of Garudamon from BT13. So this is an on-play and when Digivolving effect, but you may play one red Tamer card with a cost of 3 or less from your hand without paying the cost. So on deletion effect allows you to delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 6000 DP or less. So again, just a very good card generally. It would work really well with the Warp Biomon if I had the Christie Daemons. However, because I've removed that, obviously we're not utilising that combo anymore. But it's still a good 2-off to have though. Next up, we've got Garudamon Ace from BT15. So naturally you can counter Digivolve, but it's on play, and when Digivolving effect is that you may play a Tamer with a cost of 4 or less from your hand without paying the cost. And its all turns effect is when one of your Tamers is played, you can delete one of your opponent's Digimon with blocker. So it could, well, I say it could be, it could, hurt a Magnamon X antibody, but let's face it, with the Unpurge, it's only going to reduce it down 1 level. But this card just generally is very good for this deck. I did opt for 4, but I was just seeing it way too much. Maybe that was just my poor shuffling, who knows. But I just think 3 is good for this. But like I said, you can sort of mix and match your own ratios as you see fit, but that's just basically what I'm playing at the moment. Just to end our last set of level 5s, we've got the new Garudamon X antibody from BT16. Again, this one's got an on-play and when Digivolve effect. But you may return one red Digimon card from your trash to the hand, and then if you have Garudamon or X antibody in its Digivolution sources, you can delete one of your opponent's Digimon with as much or less DP as this particular Digimon. So it's good. It's a good card, and you can Digivolve over the top of Garudamon for a 0 cost. So it's a very solid card, especially if you want to delete something for without paying memory. It's also got a your turn effect where it's once per turn, but where a red card returns from your trash back to your hand, one of your Digimon can be given rush for the turn. And its inherited effect is a non-deletion effect, of course, but you trash the top card of your opponent's security stack. So it's just a very good card generally, especially early game as well. If you're able to get into the Phoenixmon next and just go swing and delete, or potentially activate its on deletion effect through Phoenixmon X antibodies effects, you're pretty much laughing. So yeah, it's a good free off to have. However, I am convinced I could probably run 4 in here, maybe just run 4 regular Garudamons and 4 X antibodies. But that's what I'm working with at the moment. Now, next up, we go with our level 6s. Now, let's start with the OG. So we're going back to BT11 again with Phoenixmon. I'm still running 2 of this card. I still think it's good. It could easily be swapped out for any other updated version of Phoenixmons. However, I get on well with this card. It seems to work for me. But yeah, it's just a 2 of. You could reduce it to 1. Or again, you could just swap it out for something else. But essentially what this card does, this is a your turn effect once per turn, but when a card is removed from your opponent's security stack, you can activate one of this Digimon's on deletion effects. It also comes with its own on deletion effect where you can play a red Digimon card with Avian, Bird, Beast, Animal, or Sovereign, other than the animal in its traits. Initially you would start at 3000 DP. However, you would then add 2000 DP for each red tamer that you have in play. So it's just a very good way of getting bodies on the board anyway. And yeah, it's just a solid 2 of in my opinion. But it works very well with the Sora, as does this next one. So we've got just 2 of the newer Phoenixmon from BT15. So this one does differ slightly to the one I've just shown you, but the on-play is also an on-deletion effect. If your opponent has 3 or fewer security cards, you delete one of their Digimon with the lowest DP. If they have 4 or more, then you trash the top card of their security stack. It's also got a when Digivolving effect, but you may play 1 red Digimon card with either 5000 DP or less, or 1 red Tamer card from your hand without paying the cost. So it's good for getting those level 4s out or below. But that's why I'm still running 2 of the BT11 variant, because in some cases I'd like to get higher level Digimon out into play without paying the cost. So it's just, yeah, I think it's a good split to have. And I'll be honest, this Phoenixmon really doesn't come up too often for me, where I'm able to sort of fully utilize the combo and then get out and smash some security out. But yeah, I mean, it's still a good 2 of to have, and it's still a free cost Digivolve, so it's good for a level 6. And then lastly, for our level 6s, now it's probably a bit blasphemous for me to do this, but I'm only playing 2 of the new Phoenixmon X antibody. This card is really good. When Digivolving, you get Blitz. It's a your turn effect, but whilst you have Phoenixmon or X antibody in its Digivolution sources, you add end of attack to all of this Digimon's on deletion effects. This is why this card is good, because you can just spam effect after effect, at the end of your attack. So it's just a very good card generally for this deck, and it speeds everything up. The on deletion effect is essentially you get to play out one of your 11,000 DP or lower Digimon. That's red. It has Avian, Bird, etc. in its traits. And you get to play it without paying the cost. Now, then you would delete one of your opponent's Digimon with as much or less DP as the Digimon that was played by the effect. So again, it's sort of a combination between both of the Phoenixmons. Sorry, not that one. So it is a slight combination between these two, and it's just more aggressive. So in reality, you could probably just play a full set of Phoenixmons, and that's why I'm saying it's kind of blasphemous for me to be only playing 2. But the only reason why I'm running 2 is just because I like a balanced ratio, and its Digivolve cost for 5 just generically is actually very high. So I'm not, I'm of the impression this deck only needs 2, but there are a lot of decks out there that run 3 or 4. And they play a lot more level 6s than I do. It'll be anywhere up to 8 or 9 level 6s, whereas I'm only running the 6. There's still a lot of search power in this deck, and you're always going to see all of your pieces, or almost guaranteed, unless you're bricking very heavily. But yeah, I think it's just a solid 2 off, and then that's my level 6s. Next up, we have our Tamers. So let's just start with BT11 again. So we're going back to Akio. So another searcher for this particular deck, but on play you reveal the top 4 cards of your deck and you add 1 red Digimon with the vaccine trait among them back to your hand. Then you place the rest at the bottom of the deck. It's also got a your turn effect, but when, in short, essentially when a Digimon is played by an effect, as long as it's got the Avian, Bird, etc. traits, you can suspend this Tamer to give that Digimon rush. So it's another way of just spamming out bodies into play, giving it rush and swinging again. So I do believe this card is a free off. In some cases, you could probably run it to 4. But again, I am a player who likes his ratios to be somewhat even, or if there's variety there, I will try to include as much as I can, as equally as I can. But it's a good free off to have, I think, just purely on the basis of that search power, as well as the fact that you can suspend her at any point as soon as you play a Digimon using an effect, give it rush and then swing again. The next Tamer, the last Tamer rather, is a free off of Sora from BT15. Now, this one comes with a start of turn effect. Naturally, it's the memory setter for this deck, so you're always going to start free memory. It's got an all turns effect where a red Digimon card would be returned from your trash back to your hand. You can return Sora back to your hand to play out a Digimon with a cost of 13,000 DP or less. Again, it has to be a Digimon with the various traits I've already mentioned, so Avian, Bird, etc. However, now it will reduce by 2,000 DP for each card in your opponent's security stack. So, this card is really good because you're essentially recycling your combinations. It's always going to come back to hand. You're always going to play out another Digimon. Then if you are playing a Digimon that will spam out a Tamer, then great. If not, you don't have to worry because you've got option cards that can play it for a much lesser cost anyway. But yeah, this card is just crazy good for this deck. And it's the only reason why I'm not running any Christies, because ultimately, the Garudamon that can be warped into can't play out the Garudamon, I believe from BT11, can only play out a free cost, so it's never going to play this card. You've got the ace cards, which is great, but again, ace cards, in my opinion, are, you can spam them out in a counter, but losing free memory at crucial points can cost you game. So yeah, I'm not super keen on the warping in this current set, but I'm definitely okay with having to play her out for a lesser cost and then being able to recycle my methods nonetheless. So yeah, we're only playing 6 Tamers, but it's just 3 Akios and 3 Soras. Last but not least, we go to our option cards. So first 2 we're playing is Wings of Love from BT15. So this is what I mean by playing, Tamers for a much lesser value. But the main effect is that you get to play one of your red Tamer cards with a play cost of 4 or less from your hand without paying the cost. Then, if you have a Tamer with Sora in its name, you can return 1 red Digimon card from your trash back to your hand. So it goes down very well with Sora. And then being able to spam out another body into play, it can be just stupid funny. Security effect is also that you may play a Biomon from your hand or trash without paying a cost, and then you get to add this card to your hand. So it's a lot like most of the option cards that have recently come out in BT16 for the DNA decks. So yeah, it's just a solid 2-off to have. Again, most of the decks I've seen run anywhere between 2 and 4. It's just such a good option card. For me, it just works as a 2-off. The next 2 I'm running is Offense Training from the promos. Now, if you're not familiar with this card, it's a 2-cost memory boost, in not so many words. But you reveal the top 2 cards of your deck and you add 1 red card among them to your hand. Then if you want to activate the delay effect on the next turn, you can reduce the next Digivolution, as long as it's into a red Digimon, by 2. So it's good for just Digivolving into your level 4s for literally no cost, or you can go into your much higher level Digimon for reduced costs. So yeah, good 2-off to have for that. The next 2 I'm running is that of the red memory boost. Now, I still think this particular card is good for this deck, because you're able to reveal the top 4 cards and then add a red Digimon card among them to your hand. It's not often that you'll be looking for things like Wings of Love, especially with the rates that I'm playing. But just being able to add 2 memory as well to your turn is, I think, crucial, because it can ultimately get you a game. So yeah, just a 2-off to have, but the delay effect for this particular card is gaining 2 memory, as opposed to the training card, which reduces Digivolution costs. The next card we're playing is now defensive, so we're going Crimson Blaze. I was running 2 of these, however I've opted to take out 1, and I've put in a different defense card, just as a bit of a techie choice of my own. This particular card, you reduce it by 1 for each Digimon that your opponent has in play, and ultimately its main effect is you can delete all Digimon on your opponent's side of the field with 6,000 DP or less. And your opponent can't play Digimon by effects until the end of their next turn. So the security effect, you just activate this card. So regardless whether you have it in hand or in security, you're probably going to have to play it. There's a lot of decks out there that are very quick nowadays, or go very wide very quickly. So this is just a good 1-off to have. Ultimately, you could run 2 if you choose to. I did, but I ended up taking 1 out and throwing a Trident Gaia in. This card is just stupid. The reason why I've thrown 1 in is mainly just to catch players off. This card is not a card you would expect in this deck, and if it was to be hit in security, I'm activating its main effect anyway. But the main effect is you delete one of your opponent's Digimon with the highest DP. Now, if that Digimon has 13,000 DP or more, and it is deleted by this effect, then you can trash the top card of your opponent's security stack. We're finding that currently in the BT16 meta, there are a lot of Digimon with more than 13,000 DP. So this is just a good 1-off to have, I think. And it certainly will catch your opponent by surprise. And if you do delete that Digimon, then naturally, you're trashing another part of their security stack, which may cause them concern, especially if you've managed to pull off some crazy combos on your turn to get multiple bodies out. But yeah, that's my little tech. But that's it. That's the 50 card deck I'm running. I'm finding it's exceptionally fun at the moment to play. Now, we have this recurring thing in my videos about just naming cards off the top of my head about what alternatives you could play. But if we were to go with the level 3s, now I know I'm running a full Beamon range, but you could take out the, well, I mean, it depends. If you end up deciding to play the Christie Daemons as a tamer, then keeping the Warp Beamon is pretty clutch. However, if you opt to play like what most of the other decks are doing, which is, you know, a more valid quantity of level 6s, then there may be opportunities for you to take out some of the rookies or some of the champions. In terms of what if I were to play anything differently in terms of the rookies, if I weren't playing these 3 cards, I would probably consider, you know, Digimon that are able to memory block or you know, allow your opponent to be unable to play Digimon by effects and so forth. So things like Gotsumon is a good one to have. I think I'm pretty sure I've got him in a box here. Yeah, so one of him maybe, but then again, you know, his effects will affect your own deck as well. So you just have to be careful with cards like that. Alternatively, you could run the EX1 Beomon, which has the when attacking effect once per turn. You just draw 1 when you attack it, when this Digimon attacks a player. But other than that, I mean, you could roll in varieties of different level 3s, but ideally you want to be seeing more of the Beomon line up in this deck to fully utilise it. Level 4s, I don't really think you need to play any other level 4s. The Bergermons are fine. You can mix and match your ratios with those. The Geogreymon is just a tech of my own, but you can throw that one off in there. The Saberdramons are good. Again, you can mix and match. You can either run 2, 3, 4, or even 1. But in terms of other level like 4s, maybe you can throw in things like a Quillamon. Can't remember the set number it's in, but there's a version of it which can delete a Digimon with 3000 EP or less, I believe. Or potentially you could throw in some of the ones from BT16, but let me retract that because I think they only digivolve over certain colour Digimon or a hot one. So yeah, let's not do that. In terms of the level 5s, that's not level 5. There we go. In terms of the level 5s, you could opt to run the Garudamon with Blocker. I believe that's BT11. That's a good card to throw in if you're more of a defensive player. But in terms of the level 6s, let's face it, realistically, if you wanted to play different level 6s, I think Valkyrimon Ace is a very good shout, because ultimately it's still a red and yellow Digimon, and you'll be able to find it no problem. But yeah, it's also a good counter card in general, so you could probably run a 2-off of that if you wanted to replace the BT11 Phoenix, or if you decide to somehow make more room for your level 6s, then by all means, you know, throw those in as additional tech. The Tamers wise, like I said, you could throw in Christie Daemon. You know, she's still a good card, and especially it just depends on what your kind of play preference is, but she's, you know, a solid 2-off you could run in here. For me, however, I've just, you know, it's just a personal preference really that I've removed her. On top of that, you could still run things like Taikamiya, or Hero from BT8. So yeah, the Tamers themselves, I mean, you know, as a red colour deck, you can throw in different kinds of Tamers, and they're still easily searchable, so it's not too bad. In terms of the option cards, I mean, with the exception of what I've shown you, it's just really about the ratio that you decide to throw in. If you want to run 4 off of Wings of Love, you know, go for it, why not? Alternative option cards defensively, you could think of things like Gaia Force, or you know, you can possibly throw in some dual color cards, especially if you're running the Geo Grey, but then you'd only, well, that'd be a very limited combination at best. But you know, Sunrise Buster, with a combination of Geo Greys, it goes down well, but it's one of those cards that you'll probably never ever play, so I'll leave that up to you to throw in. But on top of that, realistically, yeah, it's just, I think it's going to be purely on the basis of your ratios. Nothing else really screams at me to be added into the deck. If I were to go level 7s wise, it would just probably be the Omnimon Blitz, because that can Digivolve over Red Digimon anyway, and it's a game ender. So, but with the exception of that, you know, again, you can throw in things like Death-X, but you know, what fun is there by throwing one of those in this? So, but yeah, for me personally, I'll just stick with the Omnimon Blitz. But that's it. That's literally me rounding off this deck. But that's my 50 card deck. Like I said, you can mix and match your ratios as you see fit. And, you know, whatever really suits your playstyle. Feel free to like the video, leave some comments underneath. I will happily look at them. If there's any deck suggestions or different cards that you'd throw into the mix, let me know. If you aren't already supporting the channel, click that little subscribe button. All your, you know, support goes a long way, and it is greatly appreciated. And that's it. So I think the next videos that will probably be coming up are going to be along the lines of the new Diaboromon. And I still haven't shown my Valkyrimon deck yet, so that's probably on the list of things to do as well as my updated sea animals. So that's all to come if you're interested in any of those. But otherwise, thank you again for watching, and take care.